On a Sunday at 6 a.m., I woke up and noticed my husband missing from our bed. After searching our entire house, panic set in. Inside the fridge, a cold note waited. "Goodbye, never loved you anyway." My world collapsed instantly. The next day, fraud alerts from our bank and credit cards flooded my phone. Our joint accounts were being systematically drained. But instead of breaking down completely, I started laughing because I recognized the pattern. As a former fraud investigator, I knew exactly what was happening. My husband had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The irony of finding Jack's note in our refrigerator still stings when I think about it. 5 years of marriage reduced to 8 cruel words, tucked between leftover lasagna and orange juice. I met Jack Taylor at my college friend Stephanie's wedding. He caught my eye immediately with his confident smile and warm brown eyes. We talked all night about everything from our favorite hiking trails to our shared dream of traveling across all 50 states. Jack worked as a financial advisor for a respected firm, and I had just been promoted at the bank where I specialized in fraud investigation. Our courtship was a whirlwind of thoughtful surprises and deep conversations that made me feel truly understood. When he proposed after 8 months with a beautiful emerald ring at sunset on Cannon Beach, I didn't hesitate to say yes. Our early marriage seemed perfect. We bought a charming craftsman home in a quiet neighborhood with good schools, planning for the family we hoped to start soon. Jack managed our finances, insisting his expertise made it logical. "You catch the bad guys, I'll grow our nest egg," he'd say with a wink that always made me feel safe. 3 months ago, I decided to leave the bank and start my own small business designing websites from home. Jack supported my decision completely. "You deserve to follow your passion, honey. Our finances are solid and I've got everything covered," he assured me. I remember how he squeezed my hand and promised this was the perfect time to take a chance on my dreams. But now, sitting at our kitchen table surrounded by financial statements and fraud alerts, I realized how completely blind I had been. The first red flag appeared while I was searching for clues about where Jack might have gone. I found a stack of mail hidden in his desk drawer. Credit card statements, overdue notices, and bank correspondences addressed to me that I'd never seen before. I opened each envelope with shaking hands, the knot in my stomach tightening with every discovery. My business credit card was maxed out with charges I'd never made. There were 3 new credit accounts opened in my name that I knew nothing about. One statement showed purchases at jewelry stores and high-end restaurants in cities Jack claimed to visit for financial conferences. The mortgage payment was 2 months behind. How was that possible when I transferred money to Jack every month specifically for our home expenses? Cold reality washed over me as I realized our joint savings account contained less than $100, not the substantial amount Jack regularly reported when discussing our finances. My phone rang, displaying the number of our bank's fraud department. The representative spoke cautiously, asking if I was aware of the unusual activity on our accounts. "Multiple large withdrawals have been processed since early Sunday morning," she explained. "They were approved using your joint account credentials, but flagged by our system due to the pattern." As she listed transactions totaling over $40,000, something unexpected happened. A memory surfaced from my fraud investigation days. The transaction pattern was familiar, too familiar. This wasn't random panic spending by a husband having a midlife crisis. This was calculated, methodical identity theft, and fund extraction executed by someone who knew exactly how to navigate banking systems. The woman on the phone was still talking, asking if I wanted to file a fraud claim. "Yes," I heard myself say. "And please freeze all joint accounts immediately." After ending the call, I sat motionless at our kitchen table. The home Jack and I had created together suddenly felt like an elaborate movie set, artificial and constructed for a performance that had now ended. I walked slowly through each room, seeing everything with new eyes. The wedding photos on the wall, Jack's collection of vintage watches, the matching robes hanging in our bathroom. Had any of it been real? The Jack Taylor, the first one married, the man I shared dreams and a bed with for 5 years, had apparently never existed at all. Tuesday morning arrived with harsh sunlight streaming through the windows I'd forgotten to close. After a night of fitful sleep on the living room couch, I couldn't bear to lie in our bed, my mind swirling with questions about how many lies had been told there. Coffee in hand, I booted up our home computer. If Jack had been systematically stealing from me, there would be evidence somewhere. My years investigating financial crimes taught me that digital footprints are nearly impossible to erase completely. Jack always handled the computer maintenance in our house, claiming it was his thing. Now I wondered what else he'd been doing during those hours of system updates and security improvements. I started by checking the browser history, finding it suspiciously clean. Too clean. Someone had meticulously erased all traces of recent activity. But I knew better tricks than that. I accessed the hidden system files that most people don't realize exist and began uncovering layers of deception. Within an hour, I found a password, protected folder buried deep within the system. Using recovery techniques from my bank days, I cracked it open. Inside were dozens of documents, scanned copies of my driver's license, social security card, birth certificate, and signatures I'd never authorized. Jack had created a comprehensive identity theft kit using my personal information. There were also templates for creating false identification documents and credit applications with my information. The methodical organization stunned me. This wasn't a hasty plan formed in recent weeks. The oldest files were dated nearly 3 years ago, just 2 years into our marriage. While I was planning our anniversary trip to Vermont, Jack was planning how to steal my identity. I found spreadsheets tracking accounts opened in my name, with detailed notes on credit limits, payment schedules, and how to avoid triggering fraud alerts. Jack had used my excellent credit history to open multiple lines of credit, carefully managing minimum payments to keep everything under the radar. My hands trembled as I clicked through document after document. In one folder labeled Extraction, I found a detailed timetable for withdrawing funds and closing accounts. The final date was marked Exit Strategy, with yesterday's date circled in red. Jack hadn't just abandoned me emotionally. He'd executed the final phase of a long, financial scheme with me as the target. Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to think like an investigator, not a betrayed wife. I needed to find where Jack might have gone and stop any further damage. I began searching for any physical evidence he might have overlooked in his departure. In his workshop in the garage, where Jack claimed to build furniture as a hobby, I discovered a loose floorboard beneath his workbench. Inside was a prepaid cell phone I'd never seen before and a stack of credit cards with different names. The phone was password protected, but after 3 attempts using our anniversary date, I was in. The text messages hit me like physical blows. Hundreds of exchanges between Jack and someone named Allison. Romantic messages, explicit photos, and detailed discussions about their future together. The earliest messages dated back 8 months. She still has no clue, Jack had written just last week. Once we cleared the accounts, we'll have enough to disappear completely. 2 more days, baby, and I'll be done with this marriage charade forever. Allison's reply turned my blood cold. Just make sure you get the jewelry too. From the photos, her grandmother's pieces alone will fund our first month in Europe. I scrolled through more messages, finding photos of them together in Chicago, Seattle, and San Diego during times Jack told me he was attending financial conferences. They were staying in luxury hotels and dining at expensive restaurants, all funded by accounts opened in my name. The final message was sent yesterday morning at 5:30 a.m., just before I woke up alone. Left the note. Heading to you now. She'll be completely blindsided. Sitting on the cold garage floor, surrounded by evidence of Jack's elaborate betrayal, I felt something shift inside me. The initial shock and heartbreak were being replaced by a cold, clear anger that sharpened my focus. Jack thought he'd married an ordinary woman he could easily deceive and abandon. He'd forgotten he'd married a fraud investigator who had spent years tracking down people exactly like him. I gathered everything I'd found so far and brought it back to the kitchen table. I needed to understand the full scope of his deception before I could begin to counter it. As I organized the evidence, a notification pinged on my laptop. A credit card I'd frozen hours ago was showing attempted charges at a gas station 200 miles away. Jack was still trying to access my accounts. He didn't know I'd already begun fighting back. For the first time since finding his goodbye note, I felt a grim smile form on my lips. The game wasn't over. It had just begun. Wednesday arrived with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since discovering Jack's betrayal. Armed with evidence and righteous anger, I reached out to Kelly, my former supervisor at the bank's fraud investigation unit. "Rachelle, it's been ages." Kelly's voice was warm with surprise. "How's the website design business going?" "That's not why I'm calling," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "I need your expertise. My husband has stolen my identity, drained our accounts, and disappeared." The shocked silence on the other end lasted only seconds before Kelly's professional demeanor took over. "Tell me everything, and don't leave out any details." For the next hour, I shared every piece of evidence I'd uncovered. Kelly listened without interrupting, occasionally asking for clarification about dates or transaction details. When I finished, her response was immediate and firm. "This is an amateur hour, Rachelle. The level of planning suggests your husband has done this before. Send me everything you've gathered and I'll run his information through our databases." By early afternoon, Kelly called back with information that shattered any remaining illusion I had about my marriage. "Jack Taylor doesn't exist," she said bluntly. "At least, not the Jack Taylor you married. His real name is Jonathan Fields. We have records of similar scams in Colorado, Arizona, and Washington. Always the same pattern, targeting successful women with good credit and assets." My stomach dropped. "He's done this before? To other women?" "At least 3 that we know of," Kelly confirmed. "He creates a new identity, courts women with established careers, takes control of their finances, and then systematically drains them before disappearing. The women are left with destroyed credit, empty accounts, and often massive debt." I gripped the phone tighter. "What about Allison? The woman he's been texting?" Kelly paused. "We're still investigating, but preliminary findings suggest she's his long-term partner, not just a side affair. They work together. While he's romancing the target, she handles the background operations, setting up accounts, and creating false documentation. They're professionals, Rachelle." The revelation that Jack's entire persona had been fabricated specifically to trap me was almost too much to bear. I'd been meticulously selected, studied, and manipulated for years by not one person but a team of con artists. "There's more," Kelly continued, her voice gentler now. "We found evidence they're planning to leave the country soon. Purchases were made using your credentials for tickets departing from a private airfield 3 days from now." "Can you stop them?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice from breaking. "We're working with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, but these people are slippery. They've evaded capture before." Kelly paused. "I'm sorry, Rachelle. I know this is devastating personally, but I need you to stay focused if we're going to have any chance of catching them and recovering your assets." After ending the call, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by evidence of my 5-year delusion. The man I'd loved, shared meals with, planned a future with, had been playing a role designed to exploit me. Every kiss, every conversation about our dreams, every moment of intimacy had been calculated to gain my trust and access to my finances. Using information from Kelly, I began searching online for any trace of Jonathan Fields' previous victims. Within hours, I found news articles about a financial advisor in Seattle who had disappeared after his wife discovered their accounts emptied. The description matched Jack perfectly, though the name used was Daniel Fletcher. Another article from Denver detailed a similar case involving a man named James Foster. The accompanying photo showed a slightly younger version of Jack with different hair, but unmistakably the same person. The article included a quote from his devastated wife, a successful pediatrician who had lost over $200,000. I printed everything, creating a timeline of Jack's previous identities and scams. The pattern was consistent. He targeted professional women with good incomes and substantial savings, spent approximately 3 to 5 years with each victim, and always disappeared on a weekend when banks were closed to maximize his head start. Later that afternoon, my doorbell rang. I froze, briefly wondering if Jack had returned, but the peephole revealed a courier with an envelope requiring signature. Inside was a formal letter from our bank, indicating unusual activity on our safety deposit box. According to their records, Jack had emptied it on Sunday afternoon. The safety deposit box contained my grandmother's jewelry collection, passed down through generations of women in my family. Pieces with both financial and irreplaceable sentimental value were now in the hands of the man who had so methodically betrayed me. I called the bank immediately and spoke with the manager who had overseen the safety deposit access. Yes, Mr. Taylor presented all the proper identification and access codes, she explained. There was absolutely no reason to deny him entry. He is listed as an authorized user on the account. Sitting on my living room floor that evening, surrounded by evidence of Jack's elaborate deception, I felt a strange sense of clarity emerging through the pain. I hadn't just married a cheater or a thief. I'd unknowingly become entangled with sophisticated criminals who had spent years perfecting their methods. The cruelest part wasn't even the financial devastation, though that was substantial. It was the realization that the relationship I had treasured, the memories I had cherished, and the love I had given so freely, had been nothing but an elaborate performance designed to separate me from my money. My phone chimed with an incoming text. Unknown number, but I instantly knew who it was from. Figured it out yet, Rachelle? Always thought you were so smart with your fraud investigation career. Guess you couldn't spot what was right in your own bed. Don't bother looking for us. By the time you read this, we'll be long gone with everything you worked so hard for. The message was signature Jack, or Jonathan, or whatever his real name was, arrogant and cruel. But he had made one critical error. He'd underestimated me. He thought I would collapse under the weight of his betrayal, too devastated to fight back. He'd forgotten that before I was his wife, I was a woman who had built her career hunting down people exactly like him. I didn't respond to his text. Instead, I sent everything I'd gathered to Kelly and requested an urgent meeting with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit first thing tomorrow morning. Jack thought he was dealing with a heartbroken, abandoned wife. He was about to discover he was actually facing a highly motivated, professionally trained financial investigator with inside knowledge of his schemes and the full resources of banking security and federal law enforcement at her disposal. For the first time since finding his cruel note, I felt the stirrings of something that resembled hope. Jack had taken my money, my jewelry, and 5 years of my life. But he'd left me with something far more dangerous to him: my skills, my determination, and now, my righteous fury. Thursday morning, I woke before my alarm, my mind already racing with plans and strategies. The initial shock had given way to a focused determination that felt both foreign and familiar. I showered and dressed with care, choosing a tailored suit I used to wear to important fraud case meetings. Today wasn't about mourning my failed marriage. It was about reclaiming my life from the man who tried to destroy it. Before heading to my FBI meeting, I called my best friend Tara and my brother Aaron. They needed to know what was happening, and I needed allies I could truly trust. Tara arrived at my house within 30 minutes, her face etched with concern. I always thought there was something off about Jack, she admitted as she hugged me tightly. But this? This is beyond anything I could have imagined. Join the club? I replied with a bitter laugh. I lived with him for 5 years, and never suspected I was married to a professional con artist. Tara's expression hardened. What can I do to help? Just name it. I need a place to stay for a while, I admitted. This house doesn't feel safe anymore. I don't know what else Jack has planned, or if he might come back. My guest room is yours for as long as you need, Tara said without hesitation. Pack a bag. You're coming home with me after your FBI meeting. Aaron arrived while I was gathering essential documents and clothing. My older brother had never particularly liked Jack, maintaining a polite but distant relationship with my husband. Now I understood why. Aaron had sensed something the rest of us had missed. I should have said something, Aaron said, pacing my living room. I always felt he was hiding something, but I thought maybe I was just being an overprotective brother. You couldn't have known, I assured him, though part of me wished he had voiced his concerns more strongly. He fooled everyone, including professional bankers and legal authorities. Aaron's jaw tightened. What's the plan? Because if it involves hunting this bastard down, I'm all in. The plan is to work with the authorities and do this legally, I replied firmly. I need to protect what assets I have left and try to recover what he's taken. Going vigilante won't help anyone. At the FBI field office, I met with Special Agent Diane Warren, a specialist in financial crimes with 20 years of experience. She reviewed the evidence I'd gathered with methodical precision, asking targeted questions about Jack's behaviors and our financial arrangements. You've done impressive preliminary work, she acknowledged. Your background in fraud investigation is evident. Most victims don't recover this level of documentation. Most victims don't spend years training to investigate exactly this kind of crime, I pointed out. Agent Warren nodded. True. And that gives us an advantage. Jonathan Fields and his partner Allison Brooks are on our radar, but they've been elusive. The detailed timeline you've provided helps fill in significant gaps in their activities. So you can arrest them? I asked, hopefully. We're building the case, she replied carefully. Financial crimes across multiple states with this level of sophistication require coordination between several jurisdictions. But yes, we have enough to pursue federal charges when we locate them. After the meeting, I visited my bank in person to complete fraud claim documentation. The bank manager, Thomas, had known me for years and was visibly uncomfortable as he guided me through the process. There's something else you should know, he said quietly after we'd finished the paperwork. Your husband came to the branch personally to empty the safety deposit box. Our security cameras captured everything. Thomas pulled up the footage on his computer. There was Jack, smiling confidently at the teller as he presented his identification. He was wearing the blue suit I'd given him for his birthday last year, the same suit he'd worn when we celebrated our anniversary 2 months ago. As I watched him casually walk out with a bag containing my grandmother's treasured jewelry collection, something inside me finally broke completely. These weren't just valuable items, they were irreplaceable family heirlooms. My grandmother's engagement ring that she'd worn for 62 years until her death, the pearl necklace my grandfather had given her on their 50th anniversary, the antique locket containing pictures of my great-grandparents that had survived 2 world wars. Jack knew what these pieces meant to me. He'd listened to the stories behind each item as I'd shared them lovingly over the years. He knew they were meant to be passed down to our children someday, children we had planned to have together. And still, he had taken them without hesitation, probably planning to sell them to finance his new life with Allison. Back in Tara's car, I finally allowed myself to fall apart completely. The tears came in violent waves, accompanied by gasping sobs that felt like they might tear me apart. Tara held me silently, understanding there were no words adequate for this level of betrayal. He took everything, I managed between sobs. My money, my home, my grandmother's jewelry, 5 years of my life. How could I have been so completely blind? You weren't blind, Tara said firmly. You were trusting and loving, which is exactly what he counted on. He's the monster here, not you. That evening at Tara's house, my phone chimed with another text from Jack's untraceable number. Checked the safety deposit box yet? Those vintage pieces will fund quite a nice vacation. Thanks for keeping them in such good condition. Allison loves the pearl necklace, by the way. Wears it better than you ever did. We leave the country in 3 days. By the time you figure out where we've gone, we'll be living it up with your life savings. Good luck starting over at 35, with no money and trashed credit. The calculated cruelty of his message confirmed what I now understood completely. The man I married had never existed. My husband, Jack Taylor, had been an elaborate disguise worn by Jonathan Fields, a predator who selected his victims carefully and enjoyed their suffering. I showed the message to Tara, who cursed viciously. "Can't the FBI trace this?" she demanded. "Prepaid phone, probably purchased with cash," I explained. "He knows exactly how to avoid detection. That's why he's taunting me. He thinks he's untouchable." "So what now?" Tara asked. "He's literally telling you he's leaving the country in 3 days." I stared at the message, reading it for the 3rd time. Something shifted in that moment. The despair that had been threatening to drown me transformed into an icy, clarifying rage. Jack believed I was broken, defeated, and helpless. He was arrogant enough to gloat about his victory because he thought the game was already over. But, in revealing his timeline, he'd made his first serious mistake. 3 days. That was how long I had to turn this around. 3 days to reclaim what was mine and ensure justice was served. Jack had spent 5 years studying me as his victim, but he'd forgotten to respect me as an adversary. "Now," I said, my voice steady and determined, "we fight back, and we start by letting him think he's won completely." I typed a response, crafting the exact message Jack would expect from a devastated, desperate woman. "Please don't take my grandmother's jewelry. I'll do anything. We can work something out. Just tell me where to meet you." "Are you sure that's wise?" Tara asked worriedly. "I'm giving him exactly what he expects," I explained. "A broken woman begging for mercy. Meanwhile, I'll be working with the FBI to track his every move. Jack thinks I'm alone and helpless, but he's about to discover I have resources and skills he never bothered to take seriously." That night, I couldn't sleep. Lying in Tara's guest room, I reviewed every moment of my marriage, searching for signs I should have recognized. How many business trips had actually been rendezvous with Allison? How many late nights at the office had been spent planning my financial ruin? Had he ever loved me at all, even in the beginning? Around 3 in the morning, I stopped torturing myself with questions that no longer mattered. The past couldn't be changed. Jack had taken 5 years of my life, but I refused to give him another minute of my future. From this moment forward, every ounce of energy would be directed toward one goal: making Jonathan Fields regret the day he ever decided to target Rachelle Wilson. Friday dawned with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since discovering Jack's betrayal. Over breakfast, I outlined my strategy to Tara. First, I need to re-establish contact with all my old colleagues in banking security and fraud prevention. Jack doesn't realize the network I have access to. Tara nodded encouragingly. "Use my home office. I'll make sure you're not disturbed." Within hours, I had assembled an informal task force of former colleagues eager to help. Marcus from digital security, Samantha from transaction monitoring, and Ryan from account recovery. All people I'd worked closely with during my banking career. I shared everything I knew about Jack's methods, and they began placing alerts on their systems for any activity matching his patterns. "He'll need to liquidate assets quickly if he's planning to leave the country," Marcus pointed out during our conference call. "We can set up flags for large currency exchanges or transfers to foreign banks. Focus on luxury purchases too," Samantha added. "Based on your evidence, he and his partner have expensive tastes. High-end hotels, designer shops, exclusive restaurants. These transactions leave trails." Agent Warren from the FBI joined our call later that afternoon. "We've identified a pattern in Fields' previous escapes," she shared. "He typically uses small, private airfields rather than major airports. Less security, fewer questions. We're monitoring all private aviation services within a 200-mile radius. What about my grandmother's jewelry? I asked. The loss still a raw wound. Pieces that distinctive won't go to ordinary pawn shops, Agent Warren explained. He'll use specialized dealers who don't ask questions. We've alerted our contacts in that world to be on the lookout. After the call ended, I received another text from Jack. Begging doesn't suit you, Rachelle. Nothing you can offer would be worth keeping those outdated trinkets. Say goodbye to your precious family heirlooms. His cruelty was calculated to cause maximum pain. Instead, it fueled my determination. I responded as the devastated victim he expected. Please, I'll give you access to my retirement accounts. There's another $40,000 there. Just don't sell my grandmother's jewelry. Jack took the bait. Maybe we can arrange something. Transfer the money first, then we'll talk about your sentimental junk. I showed the exchange to Agent Warren, who nodded approvingly. Keep him engaged. Every communication helps us narrow down his location. While maintaining the charade with Jack, I launched my second counteroffensive. Using skills from my investigator days, I began tracking down his previous victims. Through careful social media searching and database access provided by my former colleagues, I identified and contacted 3 women who had fallen prey to Jack's schemes under different aliases. Lindsay from Seattle had lost nearly $150,000 to Daniel Fletcher 3 years ago. Grace in Denver had her identity stolen and credit destroyed by James Foster 2 years before that. And Patricia in Phoenix had been left with $60,000 in debt after Michael Evans disappeared with her savings 5 years ago. I created a secure online group where we could share information. I know this is painful to revisit, I wrote in my initial message to them. But together, we might be able to stop him from doing this to anyone else. Their responses were immediate and passionate. I've been waiting years for this moment, Lindsay wrote. Tell me how I can help. Through our collective experiences, we assembled a comprehensive profile of Jack's methods, preferences, and behaviors. Patricia remembered him mentioning a favorite resort in the Napa Valley, where he'd promised to take her but never did. Lindsay recalled him studying aviation magazines and expressing interest in obtaining a pilot's license. Grace shared that he'd often spoken of retiring to a small coastal town in Mexico. These seemingly insignificant details, when combined with current intelligence from banking alerts and FBI monitoring, allowed us to narrow down potential locations where Jack and Allison might be hiding while awaiting their escape. By Saturday morning, the net was tightening. A credit card registered to one of the fake identities we'd identified showed activity at an exclusive resort in the Napa Valley. The charges included spa services, room service, and an expensive dinner reservation for that evening. That fits his pattern, I told Agent Warren during our morning update. Jack always celebrates his victories with luxury indulgences. He's feeling safe enough to use non-primary accounts. We have agents in the area, she confirmed. But we need more than just their location. We need evidence of the fraud and stolen goods to make charges stick. Throughout the day, I maintained my desperate communication with Jack, each exchange providing more information for our investigation. He was growing increasingly confident, his messages becoming more detailed and arrogant as he believed he was simply toying with a helpless victim. You know what's funny? He texted. How you never questioned why I always insisted on handling the finances. A fraud investigator who couldn't spot a fraud in her own home. That's rich. I swallowed my rage and responded with what he wanted to see. I trusted you completely. I still don't understand why you did this to me. Because it was easy, came his cold reply. Women like you are so desperate for love, you ignore every red flag. Your grandmother's jewelry will be sold by tomorrow night. Enjoy the memories. The mention of a specific timeline sent me racing to call Agent Warren. He's planning to sell the jewelry tomorrow. We're running out of time. We've got a potential lead, she responded. A jewelry dealer known for handling questionable merchandise has arranged to meet a couple at the Napa Resort tomorrow afternoon. We'll have undercover agents in place. That evening, an unexpected development occurred. My phone rang with an unknown number different from the one Jack had been using. I answered cautiously. "Is this Rachelle?" a woman's voice asked, sounding nervous. "Who is this?" I demanded. A pause. Someone who's having second thoughts. "I've seen your messages to Jack. This has gone too far." My heart raced. "Allison?" Another pause. "I can't talk long. Jack would kill me if he knew I was calling you. But you should know your grandmother's jewelry is in a hotel safe. The access code is your birthday." Jack always uses his victims' birthdays for codes, thinks it's ironic. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, stunned by this unexpected betrayal of her partner. "Because I didn't sign up for this level of cruelty," she replied, her voice hardening. "Financial scams are one thing. Destroying family heirlooms for spite is another. The FBI is closer than Jack realizes. Make sure they check the hotel safe." The line went dead. I immediately contacted Agent Warren with this new information. "Could be a trap," she cautioned. "Or Allison could be looking to cut a deal by providing information. Either way, we'll verify the safe contents before making any moves." That night, I barely slept. We were so close to catching Jack, to reclaiming what he had stolen, to obtaining justice. But years of investigating fraud had taught me that the most dangerous moment in any case was right before resolution. Jack was cornered, whether he knew it or not, and cornered predators often lashed out with unexpected ferocity. I reviewed our strategy once more, searching for any weaknesses or oversights. Jack believed he was manipulating a broken, desperate woman. He had no idea he was actually facing a coordinated team of banking security experts, federal agents, and his own previous victims, all led by the fraud investigator he had so fatally underestimated. Tomorrow would determine whether 5 years of deception would end in justice or escape. As I finally drifted toward sleep, I found myself thinking of my grandmother and the strength she had shown through many hardships. "We don't break," she used to tell me. "Wilson women bend, adapt, and then stand taller than before." For the first time since finding Jack's goodbye note, I truly believed her words might prove prophetic in my own life as well. Sunday morning arrived with a mixture of anticipation and dread. This was the day Jack and Allison had planned to sell my grandmother's jewelry before leaving the country. It was also the day we hoped to catch them. Agent Warren called with an update at 7 a.m. "We have visual confirmation of both suspects at the resort. They've booked an early check, out for tomorrow morning, and arranged for a car service to take them to a private airfield." "And the safe?" I asked anxiously. "We're working on accessing it without alerting them," she replied. "If Allison's information is accurate, it could give us the evidence we need for an immediate arrest." Throughout the morning, I maintained communication with our victim group and my banking contacts. Every system was on high alert for any financial movements from the numerous accounts we'd flagged. At 11:30, Marcus called with critical news. "We just intercepted an attempt to access an emergency cash reserve," he reported excitedly. "Account registered to James Foster with a Colorado address, one of his previous identities." "How much?" I asked. $20,000. Transfer request to a digital payment app associated with private transportation services. Their escape money, I realized. "Can you trace where the funds were being sent?" "Better than that," Marcus replied. "We've delayed the transaction with a security verification requirement. When he responds, we'll get his exact location from the device IP." I immediately relayed this information to Agent Warren, who confirmed they were positioning additional agents around the resort. "We need to move carefully," she cautioned. "If Field suspects a trap, he might destroy evidence or attempt a dangerous escape." At 1:15 p.m., my phone rang with the number Allison had called from the previous night. "Jack's furious," she said without preamble, her voice tight with stress. "The money transfer is being held up, and he's suspicious. He's moved up our timeline. We're checking out now and heading to the airfield directly." "Why are you helping me?" I demanded. still wary of her motivations. "Because I want a deal," she replied bluntly. "I've got evidence on Jack's operations going back 7 years. Names, accounts, everything. I'll testify against him in exchange for reduced charges." "I can't promise anything," I told her. "That's up to the prosecutors." "Just tell them I'm cooperating," she insisted. "The jewelry is in safe 27. Your birth month and day is the code. And Rachelle? Jack has a gun. Make sure the agents know that." She hung up. I called Agent Warren immediately, relaying everything Allison had said. "This changes our approach," she acknowledged. "If she's telling the truth about the weapon, we need to prioritize public safety. We're moving in now." The next 2 hours were the longest of my life. Tara sat with me in her living room, both of us jumping at every notification sound from our phones. Finally, at 3:40 p.m., my phone rang with Agent Warren's number. "We have them both in custody," she announced, her professional tone colored with satisfaction. "Arrested without incident in the resort parking lot as they attempted to leave." "And Rachelle?" "We recovered the jewelry from the safe. Every piece is accounted for." The relief that flooded through me was so powerful I couldn't speak for several moments. Tara, seeing my expression, hugged me tightly while I struggled to compose myself. "Thank you," I finally managed. "What happens now?" "Fields will be charged with multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny across several states," Agent Warren explained. "Brooks is already providing information in exchange for consideration during charging. Your grandmother's jewelry has been logged as evidence, but given its recovery circumstances, we should be able to return it to you within a few weeks." After ending the call, I sat in stunned silence, trying to process the sudden resolution. After days of frantic activity and emotional turmoil, the abrupt conclusion left me feeling strangely hollow. "He's really caught," I said finally, the reality slowly sinking in. "It's over." "Not quite over," Tara corrected gently. "You've still got a long road ahead, with the legal proceedings, credit repair, and emotional recovery. But the worst part is behind you." That evening, I reached out to Lindsay, Grace, and Patricia to share the news. Their responses ranged from tearful gratitude to fierce triumph. We had done together what none of us had been able to accomplish alone, brought Jonathan Fields to justice. "I never thought this day would come," Patricia wrote. "For 5 years, I've checked every news source regularly, hoping to see that he'd been caught. Thank you for making it happen." Later that night, Agent Warren called again with an unexpected update. "Brooks is talking nonstop," she reported. "Apparently, she's been planning her exit strategy from Fields for months. She claims he's become increasingly erratic and cruel with each scam. Your case was supposed to be their last before retiring to Mexico. Do you believe her?" I asked skeptically. "We're verifying everything," Warren replied. "But her information has been accurate so far. She's provided details on additional victims we weren't aware of, and offshore accounts where Fields has been hiding substantial funds." "How many others were there?" I asked, dreading the answer. "At least 3 more beyond what we knew about," she said grimly. "Brooks says Fields specifically targeted women with financial expertise because he enjoyed the irony of fooling professionals who should have known better." The revelation of Jack's twisted psychology sent a chill through me. He hadn't just sought financial gain, he derived sadistic pleasure from the specific nature of his victim's humiliation. The next morning, I met with the FBI to provide additional documentation and formally identify the recovered jewelry. Seeing my grandmother's treasured pieces again, carefully laid out on black velvet in the evidence room, brought tears to my eyes. "These items will be released to you as soon as the initial documentation for the case is complete," the evidence technician assured me. "Likely within 2 to 3 weeks." Agent Warren joined me as I was preparing to leave. "Brooks provided one more piece of information you should know about," she said. "Fields kept detailed journals about each scam. In yours, he noted that you were the hardest to deceive at the beginning because of your professional background. He had to work much harder to gain your trust. Is that supposed to make me feel better? I asked bitterly. No, she acknowledged. But it might help you understand that this wasn't about any failing on your part. Fields was a highly sophisticated predator who adapted his methods specifically to overcome your natural defenses. Your training didn't fail. You were simply targeted by someone who made overcoming that training his personal challenge. As I drove back to Tara's house, I considered Warren's words. Jack or Jonathan, whatever his real name was, had violated more than just my finances and home. He'd deliberately targeted my professional identity as well, turning my expertise into another trophy for his collection. But in the end, it was that same expertise that had helped bring him down. The skills he had mocked in his cruel messages had become the very tools of his undoing. There was a symmetry to that outcome that felt, if not healing, at least like the beginning of justice. 1 year later, I sat in the back row of a federal courtroom, watching as Jonathan Fields was led in for sentencing. He looked smaller somehow, his confident swagger replaced by the shuffling gait of a man facing the consequences of his actions. Next to me sat Lindsay, Grace, and Patricia, women who had once been strangers connected only by a shared predator, now united as friends and allies. The judge's voice echoed through the paneled room as she detailed the extensive charges, multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, grand larceny, and conspiracy across 4 states. The evidence presented during the trial had been overwhelming, bolstered by Allison Brooks' testimony and the meticulous records Fields himself had kept as twisted souvenirs of his crimes. The defendant has shown a calculated pattern of predatory behavior spanning nearly a decade, the judge stated, her expression stern. He has deliberately targeted women, exploiting their trust and causing not only financial devastation, but profound emotional trauma. Fields stared straight ahead, his face impassive as the judge continued. Taking into consideration the extensive nature of these crimes, their deliberate cruelty, and the defendant's complete lack of remorse, this court sentences Jonathan Fields to 18 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 12 years. The sound of the gavel echoed with finality. As Fields was led away, he glanced in our direction, his eyes briefly meeting mine. I didn't look away. I wanted him to see that I wasn't broken, that none of us were. Outside the courthouse, we gathered on the steps in the bright spring sunshine. 18 years, Lindsay breathed. I never thought I'd see real justice. It doesn't fix everything, Grace acknowledged, but it's a start. Patricia squeezed my hand. What happens now for you, Rachelle? It was a question I'd been considering deeply over the past year. The months following Fields' arrest had been challenging in ways I hadn't anticipated. Rebuilding my financial life had required countless hours of paperwork, legal proceedings, and negotiations with creditors. Thanks to the evidence recovered and Brooks' testimony, most of the fraudulent accounts had been cleared from my credit history, but the process had been exhausting. Even more difficult had been the emotional recovery. Learning to trust again after such profound betrayal didn't happen overnight. I'd worked with a therapist specializing in trauma, slowly rebuilding my sense of security and self-worth. There were still nights when I woke up in panic, reaching for the other side of the bed before remembering everything that had happened. But there had been unexpected gifts amid the wreckage as well. My victim support group had evolved from a tactical alliance into a genuine community, women supporting each other through recovery with a depth of understanding no one else could provide. And throughout the past year, I'd discovered reserves of strength within myself I hadn't known existed. Actually, I replied to Patricia's question, I've made some decisions. I'm going back to fraud investigation, but with a different focus. I explained how my experience had revealed a gap in the financial security system. While banks had protocols for detecting traditional fraud, the unique patterns of intimate partner financial abuse often went unrecognized until it was too late. I've established a consulting firm working with banks to create better protection systems specifically designed to detect relationship, based financial exploitation, I explained. We're developing training programs for financial institutions to help them identify warning signs and intervene earlier. That's brilliant, Grace exclaimed, turning everything he did into a way to help others. It's more than that, I admitted. Through our support group, I've connected with dozens of other victims beyond our initial circle. So many of them feel ashamed, as if they should have somehow known better or seen through the deception. I want to change that narrative. My new company, Phoenix Financial Security, had already secured contracts with 3 major banking institutions to implement training programs and detection systems. More significantly, we offered direct support services to victims navigating the complex process of recovery after financial exploitation. The business was growing faster than I'd anticipated, requiring me to hire additional staff. Tara had joined as our communications director, and I'd even brought Lindsay on board to lead our client support division, leveraging her experience as both a victim and a financial advisor. As we said our goodbyes outside the courthouse, each returning to lives now freed from the shadow of Jonathan Fields, I felt a sense of closure that had eluded me until this moment. The legal proceedings were complete. My grandmother's jewelry had been returned, and now sat safely in a new security box under enhanced protection protocols. My credit had been restored, and my finances were firmly back under my control. 2 days later, I met with my newest client, Jennifer. Sitting across from her in my office, I recognized the haunted look in her eyes, the same expression I'd seen in my own mirror a year ago. "I should have known," she said, voice breaking as she described how her partner of 8 years had systematically drained their accounts before disappearing. The signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. "The most sophisticated predators count on that," I told her gently. "They exploit trust because it's a fundamental human need. What happened wasn't your fault." Jennifer looked up, doubt clear in her expression. "How can I ever trust my own judgment again?" "By recognizing that trusting someone isn't a failure," I replied. "The person who betrays that trust is the one who failed. And by working together to ensure he doesn't get away with it." As I began outlining the steps we would take to track her partner's financial movements, freeze compromised accounts, and document the fraud, I saw a flicker of something change in Jennifer's expression. Not quite hope yet, but perhaps its prerequisite the realization that she wasn't powerless. Later that evening, I sat on my porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. My new home, purchased 6 months ago in a quiet neighborhood across town, represented my fresh start. Nothing here contained memories of Jack or the life we had shared. I thought about the note he had left in our refrigerator that Sunday morning. "Goodbye. Never loved you anyway." Words deliberately chosen to inflict maximum pain, to leave me questioning every moment of our 5-year relationship. At the time, those 8 words had shattered my world. Now, a year later, I recognized them for what they truly were: the desperate need of a hollow man to wound others, because he himself was incapable of genuine connection. Jack never loved me because Jonathan Fields was incapable of love. His entire existence revolved around exploitation and deception. The revelation that had once devastated me now felt like a liberation. The marriage I mourned had never existed, but the woman who emerged from its ruins was real, whole, and stronger than before. My phone chimed with a text from Tara. "Client outreach program approved for funding. Celebration dinner tomorrow?" I smiled as I typed my reply. "Absolutely. This calls for champagne." Phoenix Financial Security was more than just a business. It represented everything I had learned through my ordeal, transforming victims into survivors, isolation into community, and devastation into purpose. Each client who regained control of their finances and their sense of security was another victory against people like Jonathan Fields. As darkness fell, I thought about what my grandmother would say if she could see me now. She had survived the depression, widowhood, and raising 3 children alone, always maintaining that Wilson women were built to withstand storms and emerge stronger. Looking at how far I'd come in just 1 year, I knew she would be proud. When Jack left that cruel note, he believed he was ending my story. Instead, he had only prompted the beginning of a new chapter, one where I reclaimed not just my financial security, but my power to shape my own narrative. The woman who had once desperately texted her betrayer, begging for the return of family heirlooms, had transformed into someone who helped others fight similar battles and win. The journey hadn't been easy, and there were still difficult days. Trust didn't come as naturally as it once had. But with each client who walked through my door, each survivor who joined our support network, I found new purpose in the ruins of what Jack had destroyed. Have you ever experienced betrayal that initially seemed devastating, but ultimately led you to discover strengths you never knew you possessed? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you found value in this journey, please like this video, subscribe to my channel for more stories of resilience, and share with someone who might need to hear that even the deepest betrayals can become foundations for remarkable new beginnings. Thank you for joining me on this path from devastation to renewal. And remember that sometimes our greatest challenges reveal our most profound capabilities.